Aravang Gibo Sumgi Lamji Rimba, and Jashu Lamrim Jing Dadima Shue de Kasango, Tachi Nianxi Jitarcha Susadima Shule, just the Chu Nianbi Sudan, that Chu Shebi Chu and Judo and Tumo which are Susad. Down the Chasan Chu Nianbi Chu de Niadi. Tebadi Nian said, Te said Roda, Tebadi Bemas Kitchen Bushuri, said Nikasanga Zugi, Tebala Dene, and then Zugi Garahu Resena, Nyamso Lemba Career, Panja Career said, Panja Karakare, Di Pangyagi, Nimbo Career, the Nigi Nyamso Lanja de Career said, Tebala Dene, dear, and it's Judushin Teba, Tebe Dinner sometime do, and the Hawkures, Panja the Lange the Hawkures. Just the Panja the large the how good you, that Ponso can say how good you do. Dinner and ya a Chinyomoba, Bumpiki, Dosho, and the castle of Tsurimsu, Tsurim Yamende, Yungres, and the Tsurim Yamende, Yongwitone, and the Tsurim Shison Tone, and the Chigayan Tipa, Savana Jeba Bangbala, and the same Tishi Dingis in Trubne, and Tsurim Dingis in Yamlenda, and Della Dene, and the Shiraki Yamlen. And the Chingre, Chesa, the Neza, Lavasumji Yamne, and this Jebala Dene, and the Shiraniam Chedu, Shila Suniting is a comnetar, and Yandik top two gores. There's Chaza and Jitum, Duen, Shingbade, Banja, Lanja Karakari, Minda, Yamsulense, Gaiba Shebadi, and the Tubiki Pioneers, Tubiki. Jeburius Tobalet in the Ungore, so that the thing is in Trubiatic, Surim Soya, that thing is in Trubiatic, Ganes Surim Sungore, thing is in Ganes Trugures, Tobalet in the Ungores, and the Nigi Shila Sunriki, Sherap Yamlen Jadia, Tobalet in the Ungore, in the Tubiki Jebu, the Yamsulim Balatene, and Tarbiko top two gores, as Matsukasa Dikor Mashuri.
Good morning. So we're continuing to look at the middle Lamrim, the middling length presentation on the stages that one needs to cultivate in one's mind in order to attain enlightenment, or the stages of training that one needs to engage in order to cultivate the paths in one's mind in order to attain enlightenment. So yesterday we started at the third chapter, listening to and explaining the Dharma. Here we started then at the beginning with looking at the how to listen to the Dharma, and in the first outline, the benefits of listening to the Dharma. So the sutra quotation that we looked at last night, firstly, we looked at how it's important to gather knowledge through hearing or listening or studying. So we can use, in this context, these three words interchangeably: hearing, listening, studying. Gathering knowledge, the three are based on or arising from the three baskets of the Buddha's teachings. And through this process of gathering knowledge, we will hear that why it is necessary to cultivate certain minds, and why it's necessary to abandon certain ways of thinking. Moreover, we'll learn how to do so, how to cultivate certain ways of thinking, and how to abandon other ways of thinking. And moreover, we'll also learn how to skillfully deal with the obstacles that we encounter whilst training our mind. This is the process of hearing. It's a gathering of knowledge so that we know what to do, why we're in this situation, and how to gain freedom from this situation. So independence on the gathering of knowledge, we have this basis that we can integrate through reflection. And here, as we come to understand the causes of our suffering, which leads to bad actions or wrongdoing, this then we turn away from by cultivating the opposite way of thinking. In other words, an ethical outlook, restraining our mind ethically. Through ethics, we restrain our mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions, and thereby we restrain ourselves from engaging in wrongdoing. So this then is the first training, the training of the higher training of ethics, which comes about independence on hearing. As one's mind becomes ever more tamed or subdued, then the mind is not so distracted by the meaningless affairs of this life, drawn to things of no real importance. In other words, our mind is not so swayed by the afflictions because of our cultivation of the training of ethics. This then is the ideal and indispensable basis for cultivating concentration, single-pointed concentration. Through hearing, we would have learned firstly of the need for concentration, that without concentration, single-pointed concentration, it is not possible to radically transform one's mind, in particular with the realization of emptiness. But for any realizations to be deep and transformative, one needs to be able to meditate with a mind that is exceptionally powerful, that is able to abide without distraction on its objects for as long as it wishes. So thereby, one is able, through hearing, on why concentration is necessary, and having, through hearing, cultivated the foundation, ethical restraint, one is then able, again through hearing, to cultivate concentration, having learned now how to do so. Thereby, one engages in the higher training concentration. In independence on the cultivation of the higher training and concentration, one's prior hearing on Dharma topics such as emptiness and reflection on that, now one is able to engage in deep and transformative meditation, cultivating the higher training in wisdom, the third training, which to be actually able to train in the high training of wisdom comes about independence on the foundation of concentration, which it itself comes about independence on the foundation of ethics. So these are the three higher trainings, all of which are cultivated independence on hearing, listening or studying, coming to understand what we need to, what ways of thinking we need to abandon and how to do so, and what ways of thinking we need to cultivate and how to do so. So these were some of the benefits of hearing.
Oh yeah, that in a typical pain, the get up Nalama, so and the get up legangs, Gashi Tubi Yini, Degurne, Labar Gala, Tempa Nidu Gur, Sherab Gijin, Timuk Meber Gur, Rangi Shegang, Deni, Rangi Shegang, Deni Novirik, and Turba Timuk Munsel remains. Now
turning to the text. Now turning to the text, if you've got the handout, it's on page 21. Only if we've bought the book, it's on page 20. We continue from where we left off last night with a garland of birth stories. So looking at the first few lines, just as I read it, I'm going to change a word in the second line and the fourth line entirely. One who through listening develops a mind of faith, nurtures a firm liking or joy in that which is excellent. Wisdom is born and ignorance vanishes. One's knowledge of that cannot be bought. Listening is a lamp that dispels darkest ignorance. So again, I read up to there. So the fourth line again, one's knowledge of that cannot be bought. And then the word that changed in the second line, rejoicing to either joy or liking.
Na ganshi tuebe yini debar degurni se da ganshi tuebe se gang tuege shungti se urade di tueyodu an sosura yini degurni se da di yakur hesha sanbe di nyamsu lengudo sanbe ge samno di gigri se urda da ganshi tuebe yini degurni se.
The Jataka stories here in this verse presents a benefit of hearing in the very first line, which is the cultivation of faith or trust or conviction in the Dharma. One who through listening develops a mind of faith.
Janju Lamrim nala karasun gore sena koyu kasong kewa chimal hada mi koyu kobang tobya laya an chingasung dungala tarche tiel hada mi kobang tobana samna tenis nyamna den se gore 아니요 거기 동안 타달래 줘야지 안 타로 토바이나 람냠는 되는 시고래 심지어 탐지교도는 산조고방 토바이나 안지 토바 제반 람냠는 되는 시고래 사지 어두시네 자슈 람르는 송고로와 되네 자자 먼저 자슈 람르 퇴바 제바이나 지산 니가라 하고 그랬으네 개와 치마 안송리야 개모고와 델레 탈비게 탑람 냠는 제에 가르치기도 하고 그래서 제가 당시에는 거기 동안 타달래 줘야지 타바 토베게 탑람디야 딘디시에서 하고 두고 그래서 지난 심지어 탐지기도는 산요고방 토바 집에 탑람 냠랭이 림바디게 하고 그래서 디네 하고 요즘 디니 지난 당하는 줄 가르고 서면 거기 동안에 타고 거래 마소 동안에 타고 거래 지난 디네 인자다 어디 디니게 탑람 먼저 거기 동안다 마소의 동안에 탈비 탑람 때문에 진짜 배 야고도 선배게 디니게 배 야고를 해야지 안저기 냠네 니시고야 되지 야고시 해야 선배게 때된 삼로 기리에서 대균에서 대바세야 돼 야고를 해야 선배 디 야고진 바다 하고 두고 그래지
One who through listening develops a mind of faith. So if we take as an illustration someone who hears teachings or listens to teachings or studies teachings on the lamp on the path to enlightenment by Lama Atisha, for example. So someone who receives teachings here thinks about the meaning. They come to gather knowledge about how to prevent falling into the low realms in their next life. And thereby ensuring that they attain another good rebirth as a human or even as a god. Moreover, they come to understand what mental paths they need to cultivate in their mind in order to attain liberation, and how to do so, and that this is possible for them. Furthermore, they come to understand what paths they need to cultivate in their own continuum to attain enlightenment. What paths need to be cultivated, and how to do so, and that this is also possible for someone like them. It is not beyond them. So in this way, someone who listens or hears or studies, they develop a mind of faith, and a mind of faith in the teachings, in that they have, instead of faith, we can say trust or conviction. They have a trust or a conviction that through applying the teachings to their own mind in the way that is presented, these results will be achieved. And this mind of faith, trust, or conviction is a joyous mind that arises in dependence on hearing.
Dene lebar kala temba nidu gyuru sede chiza lebar kala sede deshi denigi töbachi töbigi chebala dene tabada tamje kimi gowan toyada tablemgi nyamsu lingi rimbadi chipa hago be yakbore sembe yakbore sembe kisin debadki di debaki oda be yakbore din zada delya nyamlen cheya dumbachi greso lebar kala se gasan delya gawa din nyamlen be di nyamlen cheya gawa chike gawa gayo den dele dumba dönyer dumbachi gres lebar kala chesanda dumba nyamsu lengi dönyer gi dumbachi ga den nyamsu lembela gawa da dönyer dumbachi yodo 안 가르치겠으나 다델야 류가 있으니 저도 수rim소야다 네 맛에 안디 수림 시송에 토네 안심 땜바스 남면 차상까지 유 지지를 네비 띵이세 심 땜부 내가 저게 내가 띵이진 토면아 되어서나 양사 남미 오션 규루고로 땜무에 제거로 제가 디네자 다띵 수림 냠는 시송에 토네 유래 제주 네비 띵이진 줍체 심 땜바데 안디 지게 냠는 제도 연구를 했어요. 티묵시 말다 땜바. 땜델도 땜바니도 요. 땜부시로와. 티묵시 땜바. 제가 다대대한 저기 추린 냠는 제배나 띵이진 토면나 샘 땜부 차요 말와 남사 남의 주파 규셔지어와 제가데 추림 냠는 시수에 토네 다심 지진디 띵이진 땜부 샘 땜부 두고레스 제가데 띵이진 냠는 두고레 제용고레 제가 레바 갈라 땜바니도 규르세데 제가 디니기 토이도 될이야 아니 가와다 디 냠는 집에 가와다 데니 냠는 집 데니 듬바티요 온게 아니 지게 류가 예제되면 수름 손에 수름송 대시송의 토네 안샘 제준이 띵이신 직 땜부 sem tembu tu ya ze ju ne be ting yin ju go res ti tu tu go tu go res le ba ga le tem ba ni du guru se ti sung go re.
One who through listening develops a mind of faith, nurtures a firm joy in that which is excellent, or perhaps delight in that which is excellent. So here, this person is hearing a lot of teachings, and through this, faith or conviction in the validity of what they are hearing is arising in their mind. So this mind of faith is a mind itself of joy, where joy in that the person is coming to recognize their actual situation, the reasons for it, and what can be done. This is that now a confidence is arising. This is why I am suffering, and this is what I can do about it. This confidence arises. And independent on this confidence, one's mind turns towards the Dharma in the sense of applying what one is hearing through reflection and integrating it in this way. And in particular, at the outset, the guidance, the personal instructions are to cultivate ethical restraint. In other words, to turn away from the afflictions. So here, through the mind of faith, a joy or a delight has arisen in ethics, in cultivating an ethical mind. And as the mind of ethics, as the practitioner becomes ever more habituated to the mind of ethics, as the mind becomes more ethical, thereby it's tamed, it's subdued, it's not so swayed by the afflictions. They thereby come to recognize that they can actually go beyond an ethical mind, and with this basis now achieve a concentrated mind, because they're recognizing their mind is becoming more stable. It's less swayed by minds of desire or minds of anger. The mind is not so overwhelmed by the afflictions. It is ever more stable. So here, one who through listening develops a mind of faith nurtures a firm delight in that which is excellent. In this context, we can then understand that which is excellent to refer to the practitioner now having seen or experiencing the results of turning the mind away from the afflictions, becoming more ethical. They're developing delight in the possibility, that the very real possibility, that they themselves can develop single points of concentration. They now know how to do so through hearing. They know all the steps of training that are required, and they have the experience of transforming their mind, that they know that they too can develop the good quality or the excellent qualities of single points of concentration. And this then leads to their mind becoming firm or stable. That's from the growth of ethics. And then the delight here is in them achieving concentration.
And then Sherab Kishin Timu Mebar Gurus. Zanda Sherab Kishin Timu Mebar Gurus, the she Tubike to handle Pa Samje, Nisudi, the Tarbata, Temji Kimbo, want to be Tablam, take care how go and do, and then Tabatobeki, Tamji Kimbo, Motoyela, and the gas on Yomo Bazawa and Bongo Baza, the Yomo be Nimbo the Karisha, Dame about to be Sherab Tomban to be shared. Just the Nigi, how going to dinner, how go we get Tomban, you Tomban in the Tiju, Nebeke, the thing is to do things in Dubit, things in Ting Ane, and then there are Tomban in maybe Sheila, in a Houghton troop chair, and the Nigi Tomban to be Houghton troop, Ticombala Tene, and the Karsho, the Timu Mebar Gurus, and Yomo Tamjig Zawa, Denzim Marik Badi, Meba Pang to Pangbar Guru, Pangres, or Tisadine, the Sherab Kishin, Timu Mebar Gurus.
Just before I give Genla's commentary now, just on that former segment, because maybe how I said it wasn't so clear, the word we have nurtures a firm. So firm can also be stable. So Genla was referring to more as being stable, which is the result of ethical restraint. The mind becomes stable. Then the next word we have in the translation is rejoicing, but better joy or delight. Here now, the joy and delight is in the very real possibility of attaining concentration, and then the delight of when concentration is achieved. So that's just those two words there. Now to come on to Genla's commentary now. The third line, wisdom is born and ignorance vanishes. This practitioner now is continuing to hear and reflect on teachings extensively, and they have a very clear understanding of why they are bound in the suffering realms of samsara. What suffering is and its causes. This is very clear. Moreover, they also have a very clear understanding of how liberation is attained. That liberation firstly is possible and how it is attained. So this practitioner has come to understand very clearly that it's their afflictions that cause them to suffer. It's their afflictions that bind them in the suffering realms of samsara. But that those afflictions are not innate to them. Their afflictions do not define who they are. Those afflictions can be completely eradicated through developing the contrary paths, the opposite way of thinking, the wisdom realizing emptiness. So this has been well understood. And now in dependence on their successful spiritual development, their successful training in ethics as well as in concentration, they now can focus on cultivating the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is the direct antidote to the root cause of each and every affliction, the ignorance of self-grasping. Wisdom is born and ignorance vanishes.
나디 가상 먼저 슈바다 돈다지바를 차기도와 제산 되네기 고 퇴비기 강시 슝디 퇴비기 퇴용도 퇴비 된들라 퇴비 된들라 삼당에도 안에데 가서 냠슬령가 갈 방자 가림바다 하고도 그래 되네가 하고 봤더니 되네가 빼 약불에서 빼 될야 안에 대바기 그래서 대바기에도 디 냠슬래기 안 가와당 안 될야 안 지게 네 가와도 용그래서 내 가와 용거래서 내 가와 끼어도 되네 되냐기 됨바 되니디 지금 가와다 뭐봐서 지와다 뭐봐디 냠는지 뭐봐도 됨바기 그래서 됨바기에도 하는 자 니지도 수림소야다 제송발에 되네 ane 그 띵에서 신여주와 되네 동반이 되려야 지게劳动 접시 동반이 또 비셔라 공발에 되네 ane 된지 녀모 코리에 자와 자위 녀모바 차상이 규조 띠메 된진디 방바 토바 규레 매바 수그레 지단디 매바 수도 타바 토고레 세제 가상다 돈다 지바로시 차기도 하림.
What we've looked at in these three lines is the same as what we looked at in the verse last night. In that it's through hearing teachings, hearing, listening, studying teachings, that one develops a trust or conviction, a faith in the teachings, in the sense that the Dharma is presenting why I'm suffering. It's explaining to me why I encounter unwanted circumstance after unwanted circumstance. Moreover, it's presenting that I can do something about it. It is not beyond my capacity at all. And I'm being shown precisely what and how to do about my situation. So this leads to a mind that is delighting in the teachings, which is a mind of faith. This then, in turn, leads to an aspiration, an interest, a yearning in cultivating the teachings in a transformative way, not merely having gathered knowledge, not merely taking pleasure in the gathering of knowledge, but a determination to transform one's mind. So there is the sequence that, through hearing and reflecting, the faith arises, which is a mind of delight in the teachings, and that in turn leads to this yearning, I need to transform my mind. I can do it, and I will do it. From that then, that was our first line, nurtures a firm, so this then refers to the cultivation of a mind that is stable because it's ethical, it's not being swayed by the afflictions, and delight in that which is excellent. So here one is turned towards, can see the effect of ethics that training in ethics has brought. So now I know with confidence I can also develop single-pointed concentration. And here one is is delighting in that which is excellent, the cultivation of the stable, powerful mind. And with this basis, then, one cultivates, the thirdly, wisdom is born and ignorance vanishes. One cultivates the wisdom realizing emptiness, the direct antidote to the root cause of all our suffering, the ignorance of self-grasping.
아도 신앙아 저게 타르둑 산지오 고방 투비 토그리 세지 되네게 제시자와나 되네 인디 다티티체 안다 산jel은 비네 디무 시랍 콤 디무 바차네 제바 빵지네 안 빵연데 산지오 고방 토그리 세야다 되네게다 산지오 고방 멤버체 타르발라 슈웨나 디고 레나디 나나 저게 직소소라랑기 지게 가서를 옹보직비기 니발에 되네요 고래야지 용거와 제자당한 저게 디 데니게 퇴바 제발에 되네 퇴바제 퇴비 된데라 삼 대삼베디 띵이진 줍시네 줍 달라 띵이진 신네 줍네 대코나니래 미비게 아니 동반이래 미비실라 송저 곰 디냠소 렘발에 되네 안는가서 코르비 동아기에 유 디무 된진 바샤나 제바 매버 규그레 랍나 산요고바 토바지고래 세지 공부제스티스 송 데네고래 지요바다 자와디 소르 데니시로바다 다야지 델레 디나신직 되스 고 락바로스나 데니기 안에지게 퇴베제 퇴베된데라 삼노다 삼노데 삼노하고 데네 메비 신의 주비 데네 동반이를 비게 안실라 손저 공발레 데네 덴진 사본네 제바 빵비에 타바토투그레 사지 데네 소시네 공바티 제야요르바나
This process that's outlined here in these 3 lines, and we also looked at last night, this is the process that one engages in order to attain liberation from suffering. Complete liberation, the state of nirvana, what arises in arhat. But if one has the predisposition that when one hears teachings of the Mahayana, that a deep yearning arises not only to attain liberation for oneself, but rather than attaining liberation for oneself, the deep yearning arises to attain enlightenment for the sake of all beings. For such a practitioner, whose yearning is directed towards not attaining individual liberation, but towards enlightenment for the sake of all beings, they will engage in the same process of training that's presented here. Whether the goal, whether the goal is for individual liberation or enlightenment, this process of training is the same. So those who have the yearning to become a Buddha for the sake of others, they will know through hearing that it's indispensable they have the foundation of ethics, to stop bringing harm to others and moreover bring benefits. And they'll recognize that through training in ethics, their mind is becoming subdued, becoming stable. And this is the foundation now to develop concentration. And single-pointed concentration is an excellent quality that is indispensable for all the realizations to radically transform the mind. And they will then be able to cultivate single-pointed concentration. The practitioners aspiring for enlightenment will also recognize that their ignorance is serving to limit their capacity to benefit others. And therefore, they will have a determination that in order to benefit others more, my ignorance, I have to abandon it, I have to eradicate it, and will, for this motivation, engage in the meditation on cultivating the wisdom realizing emptiness. So therefore, the same 3 steps are applied by practitioners striving either for individual liberation or for Buddhahood. So these then are results of listening to the Dharma, benefits of listening to the Dharma.
자라는 마소나 디 지게 베는 나세디나 가르 이민 나세디 가르스 유가르스 가르스 이미지 제바체제 나지디 오 유데네 젠 데데데 나즈용 레샤스 마고디 셰럽게 제바체제 곧 하고 남미 제바체제 하고 또비 셰럽게 디 셰럽식으로 와지다 가서 랭이 야도다 랭이 예와체네 안 하고 또비 로디 셰럽식으로 와 제바체네 지다디 셰럽식으로 하고 해야 되는 거 라바라바 삼다는 거 셰럽시야 될 비네 저기 잘라 야도디 야가레 디마 남미에지네 야고 하고 가니 또벨로디에 셰럽레 안디 멤베당 저기 지게 가서래 칼라마서 쇠당으로 야고진데 제바제디 디제네 갈딘 디네 쇠당데 야 제바진데 야고 하고 셰럽 같이 인다 많이 제 저기 페니 지게 미로 통도에는 미 인다마이 제바제제 바두신의 또한도 미마이 임바하고 해도 아니 거기 대하셔로와 아니 가지는 미는 다른 분은 봐다도 비기 신나길래 매여다 매서 삼로다 제바제 근데 또 보니까 매비 두어를 가르쳐 통고도 선좀 안돼 매여래서 또 비기 두이 제바제는 두어이비 매여다 매 제바제 근데 두이 김선진의 매여 또 되게 셔럽치기로 저 세상 싫은 아주 셔럽차고로 봐 제산디 셔럽셔야돼 라바라발랑 아주 잡아내 가지고 디로 앞에 가지고 지딘비고 롭종 시연 가리나다 파 제바제 롭종진이 하고 해야 돼 셔럽차고로 와 저는 디묵셔야돼야 나 디묵디야 망불 거해요라 제산 디묵셔야돼 유가야 마시고 몽되어바들 디묵라고 그러고 디묵셔라 디묵셔다 유가야 마시고 몽되어바들 디묵셔지다 제산당 지금 지게 가서 소수게 잘라데 가와샤 하모는 니 잘라 가와샤 하모데 디무르 와다 하모가 디무르 제사딩 안주기 직 마싱바데 디무르 마싱벌로디 디무 낙톰돔제 마싱바지 디무르와 제상안주 롭조에나 가는데 전 마싱바 디무샴 제사 디무세데 가 마시바 낙톰되겐딜 디무세오르와 제사 디르 라파세데 디무나라 디세오르 제사 디네 자상안주 지딘벨제나 셰라케베 디무세 메버 규르세드 제산당은 저기 롭종으로 가르치나 진짜 당보제 마퇴 직견제를 퇴네 년에 한 삼당에도 뒤던다데 하고 그래서 뒤네 된다 하고 해도 대지 하 먹어 삼도 디무디 매워 주고 그래서지 온도스네 저 락바락바라 삼단에 뒤네 해주고 공부해야 여러분 셰럽 계시 디무 매워 주고 세대가 저기 롭종으로 제 가르치네 지게 칼라소당으로 시내다 현다가 당뭐 마싱바지 호소 마싱바디 해려레스 디디무그레 마싱바디 안디 파지 현다질 발로종데 파년제 소수게 퇴제 되네 된다다 하고에도 되네 퇴나 하고게 셰럽지 끼어도 디 하고에 셰럽 끼어도 되자 먹어도 도도고로 진짜 디무디 매바 차르고 그래서 진짜 되네자 셰럽기베 디무 매바 줄세야데 되네게 저기 바 제시 그 아주 지딘비기 안 자와다 되네기 토네 안 라바라바라 삼다 셰베네 고데와게네 자여 바시리.
Let's look further at this third line. Wisdom is born and ignorance vanishes. I'm confident when you see this line, the meaning that will arise in your mind is the meaning that we most commonly come across in the Dharma, that wisdom refers to the consciousness that understands reality, the wisdom realizing emptiness, understands how phenomena exist. And through cultivating this wisdom, one eradicates the opposing mind, which is one of ignorance, and a consciousness of ignorance that does not know how phenomena exist in reality. And normally, this would be referred to as the ignorance of self-grasping, that graspeth the self to exist in a way that it does not exist. So this, I'm sure for all of you, is what would come to mind when you read this line. And this is a correct understanding. But what's good to know is that these same words can have different levels of meaning. So that is the meaning that you would have all thought of, and that I presented earlier, is the general meaning in the Dharma. But there is the same sentence in society would have a similar meaning just about different objects. So at a different level of subtlety. So to say this word that we always translate as wisdom, shut up, is also a word for knowledge, or literally it would be highest knowing, highest understanding, highest understanding. That's what it would literally be. But it can also just be equally translated as knowledge or knowing something. So knowledge or knowing something, this is where we have a correct understanding. So we have a correct understanding of, if there are two courses of action, which is better to engage in than the other. Or if one has a collection of ingredients in your kitchen, based on having correct knowledge, or correct understanding, one will know, with these ingredients, I can make this dish, but I cannot make this kind of dish. So this too is knowledge. Likewise, one would know certain food types, whether they're nutritious or not, beneficial or not. Or if we see someone, it will be knowledge that says, oh, I know this person, this is the name, this is how I know them, etc. So this is the same word, shut up, knowing or understanding, and in our Dharma context, usually translated as wisdom. And also, there are other forms of knowing or knowledge where we infer a meaning. So if we're out walking and in the bush and we see smoke in the distance, we'll infer there is a fire over there. And depending on perhaps the color of the smoke, the amount of smoke, we would infer whether it's a bushfire or if someone's just burning leaves and so forth. So this too is knowledge, is knowing. Then the next word we have here, that of ignorance. So here in Tibetan there's several words for ignorance, and this particular word is timuk. So the normal word we have is marikpa, but this one is timuk. So here it's translated as ignorance, and that's fine, because here the translation is correct, but one should understand that there are different applications or levels of wisdom. So we have this consciousness of wisdom, we have a consciousness of ignorance, and it can refer to very ordinary levels of knowing, so the wisdom, and not knowing, the ignorance, or it can refer at the more exalted levels of the Dharma, the wisdom that realizes emptiness, the ignorance that misapprehends reality. So there are many types of ignorance, and there are different words as well for it in Tibetan. So this word timuk is more of a stupidity, a dullness in not knowing. So if before one develops knowledge of a particular topic, one is ignorant of that topic. Yeah. Or to express that differently, before one develops knowledge of a topic, one doesn't know or understand the topic. That is ignorance. There's not knowing, there's not understanding of a topic. So this is a common way that, or the way in the world that ignorance would be used, is not knowing how to do this, not knowing what would make, which path to follow, which course of action rather to follow. This is an ignorance. The knowledge is understanding a topic, knowing how, what is the more skillful way to engage in a topic. So therefore, knowledge overcomes not knowing. And that would be how we'd express it, these same words in ordinary society. But in our Dharma context, we'd say, wisdom overcomes ignorance.
지게 지라바다 타르바다 탐제 캠바다 차산이야 제시가 유딩의 최고래 나다디 디고서 시럽기베 디무메바 규루스의 시럽디 다음에바 동방이 미베 시럽 디곰발에 때네 근데 뇽모바 탐제게 자와 덴지 마릭바 디묵세디 디방그리 방와 규리에서 반에 타르바다 탐제 캠바고바 토그리에서디 언두 순고다 디고서 시럽세디 다디 디고서 시럽기진 디무메바 규루스야디 디고서 시에게 시럽디 가라를 고고르스는 동방이 베도베 시럽을 고고르스 디디무메바 유스 디묵세디 가를 고고르스는 덴진 마리바 다신 마리바 덴진 마리바데로 고고르스지.
So how this line is translated is completely correct, because here in our context it refers to the wisdom realizing emptiness that eradicates the ignorance of true grasping. But it's good to know that the same words can be used in other contexts. So the general way that in society one would refer to, there's something that I don't know, that would be ignorance. And then coming to know it, one's developing knowledge or wisdom, coming to understand how it works. So the gathering of knowledge is the cultivation of wisdom, and the not knowing something is being ignorant about it. So therefore these words can be used in different ways, but here it specifically refers to the cultivation of the wisdom that understands reality and thereby eradicates the ignorance that misunderstands reality. The wisdom that realizes emptiness overcomes the ignorance of self-grasping.
Adela dani ona rangi shejan dini nyuwi riksedi. Da rangi shejan dini nyuwi riksedi da dere ma dostine azugu shungdi töbege düendele ya dusin töje rangi sosora jike odadi nyamlen chege rimba pangja dire langja dire da ngana ju dusin nyamlen ji pangbaina di pangbaina an tharba da tamje kebe ko ma togure lam janju semna an tongbai du be shera dus yungur esedi töbele dene an disu hago goroba jaza rangi sheja rangi töbachi töbege duen dusin sheja shegore shejansa dine tobya yobada denige ane lam nyamlen chene kasore 지게 완전 유sem사당 근데 지게 탈바다 탐지 캠비 고바 개와치마 하다 미고바 도비 탑람다 근데 투비여바디 하고 셰바스 하고 와서 셰장 대드니 셰바이나야 대소 소수기 되니 셰바 잠기 근데 고 소수게 냠렘 맞잖아 니 용구 말해서 제선 소수게 되니 셰바 나시 되니 소수게 솔바 곰제 냠는 제발에 때네 안 똑바디게 두시네 아니 규례게 오샤고레스 마도 내내기 셰바이原来 돼서 저기 파잘라 나신 뉘제 안셰 종야요 말 뉘요 말 뉘제 라스가요 말에서지 되네서 랑기 셰자 되네 뉘위 릭시데 되네 제소 소수게 냠는 게제 되네 대시 추림기 소야당 아니 지딩에진게야 다음에부터 베셔로 게야 어디서 소소 냠는 제지 소수길에 게고야 레마도 되네기 지게 냠는 제 먹어야지 진유샤제 소소리아 지야오 라야지 여러분은 되네 요 말에서 지 랑기 시게 되네 유릭사지 어디는 제시 잡시나.
Coming to the fourth line, so there's a spelling error in the Tibetan, hence there's a mistake in the translation in the English. So the correct translation, one's knowledge of that cannot be bought. One's knowledge of that cannot be bought. One's knowledge of that refers to what the three previous lines, coming to understand the Dharma. One comes to understand what should be adopted and what should be abandoned. What should be adopted refers to what are the virtuous minds, why one should cultivate them, and how to do so. And what should be abandoned refers to the non-virtuous minds, how to abandon them, why to abandon them, and how to do so. And through this knowledge, one also, which comes about through hearing, one comes to understand what needs to be adopted and abandoned in order to attain liberation, what needs to be adopted and abandoned in order to cultivate the paths of a bodhisattva within oneself. This knowledge, for it to have a transformative impact on one's mind, one has to put it into practice. And this word for practice literally means to gain experience of. So one needs to practice what one is hearing, or one needs to gain experience of what one is hearing. This is the only way to transform one's mind. This is the only way to attain liberation or cultivate the paths of a bodhisattva. One cannot buy this. One cannot buy the knowledge, and one certainly cannot buy the transformation of one's mind. One has to do that oneself through hearing, reflecting, and meditating. That is the only way. A transformed mind, a liberated mind, the mind of a bodhisattva cannot be purchased. Only comes about in dependence on practice, practicing what one is hearing.
넌 니네 자당 안 저게 don다 가르 순고라스네 아 저게 니네게 퇴배게 되는데 파삼다지 딘마 니네딘 두어서 하고도 소수기 배준 제제 가신 구비는 준주전 냠는 제고레스 냠는 제제는 즉 배주 제제 냠는 제발에 때네 두스 가수 줄래 똑바디 파 주가수 줄래 기토가 제고래 사실 순고한다나.
Continuing and also coming through the process of hearing and reflecting comes the indispensable characteristic of joyous perseverance, the mind that delights in the process of transforming one's mind, that delights in hearing, reflecting and meditating, joyous perseverance, the mind that strives with joy to transform oneself. This is indispensable to cultivate or to attain realizations.
나디네 미 야지기 데 랑기 시장 시시에서데 정부 매바체 시에서데 정부 매바체 도시네 제가 삼다위나 데 람림 심나라 제마 장샤바데 정부 민도 시에서도아 제사다디 디체 다딩한저 정부도 아시아 정부 시에서 시에서데 하고 와서 고고로와 다디디 마제 시작하래 다 정부 매반의 샤사 시에서 주요반 예비기 토네 다 제시하게 가르쳐 버스네 랑기 시장 되는 뇨위릭 세드 제자다 랑기 퇴비기 퇴당보 퇴바지 퇴비 된데 남섬다에도 주름소야다 띵이든 주비다 다 가소리 실하손리기 시랍 다음에 버터비 시랍 얌레 시랍 대수 주할 때네 아니 녀모 띠무 사번나 제바 빵비 빵바 탈바셔야 되게 되네 하고에도 대소야 랑기 빼지 되네게 배수제제 안지간 저기 최슈에 되나 랑기 안지 소소야 지게 튕기로 가르여네 배수에 따제 아는 안 속에다 최슈에 고급도 제제 슈고를 슈비 되냐면 제들라 소소야 직 튕기니 가르여면 디스 배수에 따제 먼저 냠는 제호래 사실 안디게시 디마제 랑기 수부게 샤호랑 배제 따제 안두시네 뇨유릭세도 피샤드 파 종제 추녀외네 지그리 사실 단달에 디승거데 저거를 차고 치디 단단닝벌 가서 랑기 류기 소호네 샤이네 배제 따제 안가 주기디 냠는 제라 냠는 제호래 사실 제자 되네게 냠는 제 에마세 자침보데기 나주 류비샤데 세디점이로와 그래서 세디점는 것이 매와 차르고로 제사다 타로 진이르 추름수야다 띵에즈르의 신이르네 난 다음에 봐도 왜 셔럽 귤레기 대소냠는 제발할 때네 띵기 대화 되네 띵인 대화 사람네 사람한테 대화 차토 대화도 내봐도 토고자 디스페 기해친 보시오 제사 랑기 류롱주 가리네 비주에 땅에 아는 거 저기 냠는 제에게 뭐 퇴바제야다 퇴비 된되게 된기 되게 가서 하고도 디소소 귤레 기획이 된다라 배수 제고래 사실 고고거다 된 순고래
In this fourth line in the Tibetan, if we compare different Tibetan texts, there's either for the word for knowledge or for flesh, it's differentiated by a letter E, so sha or she. And in the middle Lamrim and the great Lamrim, there is a difference in the same quotation. So the only way to determine which edition has an error, a printing error, then one would need to go back to look at the source material, the sutra. But that I don't have. So therefore, the way I've just explained this fourth line is if the word isn't flesh, but is rather knowledge or wisdom. But if the word actually is flesh, if in the sutra it actually is flesh, then it would be as in the original translation that you have in your books. So if the translation of the fourth line, if the fourth line is, this is well worth paying for with one's own flesh, the meaning would be that having come to hear and reflect extensively, hearing about hearing through the three baskets, hearing about the trainings in ethics, concentration, and wisdom, coming to understand how these can be cultivated and what the benefit is, one's mind will naturally expand, one's outlook will expand beyond this life, recognizing that all my possessions that I have, everything, will be left behind when I die. All these things that I value so and strive so much to accumulate will be left behind when I die. But my mind and the imprints that I've accumulated, that will continue. So therefore, all these material possessions, including this body, it's very finite. Thinking like this, one's values change. What one values, what one sees as meaningful, changes. And here, one would come to recognize that whatever one has, whatever favorable circumstances one has, including one's body, including one's life, should be utilized to cultivate the causes that will lead to liberation or enlightenment. This is the actual purpose of this life. So in this way, one would be able to say, this is well worth paying for with one's own flesh, with the meaning behind, whilst recognizing that one cannot buy these good qualities of a transformed mind. One will utilize even one's own body, one's own life, all one's material circumstances to bring about a transformed mind, because nothing is as important as cultivating the Dharma deep within.
Lamrim
So I cannot say with certainty whether the Lamrim Chemo or the middle Lamrim, which of them has the printing error, so whether this is referring to flesh or to knowledge, but whichever is correct, then you've had the translation, the commentary for that.
Ina Diniga Gari Natishikala Dondachiba Charukure, Dini Nuvi Rixi, Nona Tigri Sachaurua, the Nona Tigri said Sikunyanga, sick the Nona Tigri said Nyanga, Siksun Shabare. Donda Cargosene, Nona, Nona Chala Nanzula Ragurwa, Manuna Rago Marwa, Chisa Nuna Nanzula Ragurwa, Dinashi, Nuvi Rixi, Chisa that the Dinganzu Kari Nuvi Rixi, the Carinion Tigri said. Lunga yisu nyeje de mu tsujum suya da ane je tele kaso de yu tongba ni le be zeji de be shine de be dingye zin de ya de ne shine di de ne tongba ni le be shela shila son de sherap nyamlen deso se ora deso nyewe rikse de ne gi rangi donda de shene she jang se de donda de ha ko ba chene deso ba bezu chene so so ge dang do le bezu chene nyamlen chene rangi le je wu re asa che da de lamrim ding ma she ta chi du shene rangi de ne gi nyamlen je ba de ha ko ba che twe be den da ha ko ne de ba bezu chene nyamlen chene rangi le je ba che wu re sa go go da nyewe rikse de nyoba na ran la go ro ba di na shin 배주에는 냠는 제반이라는 게 기용으로 똑바디 제가 녀비 이렇게 되고 그래.
Whichever printed edition is correct, the explanation will differ, but the meaning remains the same. So whether the correct translation is one's knowledge of that cannot be bought, or this is well worth paying for with one's own flesh. Whichever is correct, the meaning remains the same. If we were able to purchase a transformed mind, that is what people would buy. Nothing else would be as important. Everyone desires a mind of lasting, stable happiness. But if that could be bought, people would give their flesh for that. But it cannot. What can be done, though, is one can hear, reflect, and meditate. And to the extent that one does so, coming to see through extensive hearing and reflecting the validity of the teachings, thereby generating faith that I am now actually really seeing why I'm suffering and what I can do about it. Therefore, I must strive to restrain my mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions, thereby cultivate the ethical restraint of restraining one's body, speech, and mind. Because I know that this is the indispensable foundation for spiritual progression. And as one's mind does become more subdued, more tamed, more ethical, now one sees this change and recognizes, I am ready to successfully cultivate the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. I can do this. I can do this. Here one sees that nothing is more important, because this is already we are attaining a happier mind, a calmer mind. With the cultivation of the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, one then is ready to actually realize emptiness and take our prior cultivation of the wisdom realizing emptiness and now come to actually realize emptiness. So here, as one is progressing, a key component is the cultivation of joyous perseverance, where one would even sell one's own flesh to attain this result, because nothing is more important. This is such an expression is a way. Such an expression is a way of expressing joyous perseverance, the delight that engages in virtue, the recognition that nothing is more important than cultivating these virtuous minds. This gives us the strength of mind to cultivate the three higher trainings.
That is a Jambu Mebache Rangi Shekan City Shekan Rangi Shatty the Nuna degree as a signal most of this to Tunde, Dondala Carson was in New said Rangular Topati Rangular Jabache said Jabache Carson Rangi Bezu Rangi Lu Longe Takarine Rangus Lune Sol Tunea Chick Casore Galela Mazembache Nyamlenje Topati Gule Jabache said Jesan Shekan New Rick said Jesan Rangi Lu Longe Chasan Beshet Naji Big Bezu Jejin and Topati Gule Jabache Rangula Topati Jabache Yubache as Google Jesan. 지상아들이 수rim수에 쏘다 되게 송 세야데 소로 투나야 송고를 에서지 그 수rim수에다 소소 결혼 수rim수님의 시긴 남는다 결혼 수에나가 수rim수인 세야지 온 소를 뢰다 소를 되게 송 니나시 데니기 냠는 수림수야다 딩이즈 주야다 셰르 다음에 봐도 be 셰르 동반이도 be 셰르 랑 유래 냠는 제알이야 랑기 류로주 소로 투나에 베주 깔레 가제겸 깔레 겹제 똑바디랑은 귤에 깨버려 제고 그래 해야지. 다던다 정부 연날에 매날 디 가리네 디니가 돈다데 배주의 제제 냠는지는 데니기 추주면 냠는다 띵해지냐 셔라 냠는 랑 귤에 깨버려 제고 그래 해야지. 그거다 돈다 지발에.
I just want to make this clear because one will see different translations elsewhere, and I want you to have a clear understanding that the meaning remains the same, whether there is the letter E or not, or whether it's referring to knowledge or flesh. Because whether the translation is one's knowledge of that cannot be bought, or this is well worth paying for with one's own flesh, the meaning comes down to the same thing. What we need to do is transform our mind. And to transform our mind, we have to here reflect and meditate, and in dependence on this process will give rise to the determination, a yearning and a determination to transform our mind. And this is required for us to radically recognize that what all the activities that consume our time and our energy and our thoughts, they actually are largely meaningless. And I can let them go. Everything will stay the same. It will all be fine. Rather, I must strive, even at the cost of my life, to cultivate pure ethics, their foundation. And then the meaning of this expression, because it can be inferred from this expression of paying with one's own flesh, is to the same extent that we guard our own life, that we spontaneously repel from a situation where our life is in danger, our body is in danger, we may experience some pain. In the same way that we repel naturally from such a situation, so too should we repel from engaging in ethics or engaging in unethical thoughts or following our afflictions. So the same way that we protect our body and life, the same way we are repelled by the afflictions and are thereby not deceived by them. So this then shows to a strength of mind, a determination to remain ethical through seeing the faults of being deceived by the afflictions.
Nene the Töba Dimuk Dreme, Töba Dimuk Munsel Dreme yin sechi. Jisa Töba Dimuk Munsel Dreme yin sechi, Hanzo Töba di, dan Dreme na shiri, lo na shiri, so. Pena Hanzo Tsena Hui na, Kangpa na lo, lo me na Nahung ra chiyo durwa, da Munba se, Munba se Nahung se ura, Jisa Nahung she, Nahung chiyo ba che, da lo di Dreme se de lo se de, Jisa lo di bar shabe na, ko Nahung di dejin Gao zhoba na chesa ye chi ne, chasang tonggo chasang tongyong go rwa, Jisa Töba Dimuk Dreme yin se de, Jisa da di pe di Hanzo lo da Nahung yi le she. Da donda la kar sung zo Töba se di Töba le de ne ni su kan de kan yin na di yin ba de yin be ha go ge chama de gi ge tok pa chama de gi ge ye je ba je san de chama de ge di zhe me na je re je san de ha go yong de de ji ha mo go de me ba se zu gu re mun ba de ha mo go de mun ba che na go na xi je san lo ba de mun ba de ga zhu na me ba cha de ba na xi ma zhe ge dang bo ji 지 가리 롭줘나 가리나 지 퇴제 퇴비 된다 삼다지 된다다 하고 요도 대지 마신 바디 문바디 파 세주고 그래서 제상 퇴바 가서의 디무 문세 죄매 사지 퇴바 사지디 문 로나지 죄매 나시레스 문바세 마릭 바지바래 몽 바디무 마릭 바나 하 먹어와 내가로 몽 바는 지지 바디무 문바스나 하 먹어와 마릭 바스 하 먹어와 세고로데.
The fifth line, listening is the lamp that dispels darkest ignorance. Listening then, so a lamp serves to illuminate darkness. So one walks into a room and immediately turns on the light. In this way, darkness is illuminated. So the lamp that is referred to, this would symbolize valid cognitions. Valid cognitions are required to eliminate ignorance. An ignorance of not knowing how phenomena exist in reality, or in other cases, of just not knowing how something is. The wisdom of that arises, the valid cognizers of the various kinds of knowing, so not just as we use wisdom, the various kinds of knowing, eliminates the ignorance of the various kinds of not knowing.
제가 디묵세다 몽바세다 마릭바세데 돈다치바데 그래서 간주 그 로르바시데 하 먹어야텔 몽바라게 마릭바레 디묵레 진짜 유디 베나가즈리아 나즈나르데 나즈델이야 하지 요르베 세아치네 난주 유메 하고 그거 마시 하 먹어 되는 저러바다 띵아즈 몽바레 마릭바레 아니 디무하레 가서네 유디라 몽데 몽바레 고 유리 마도 봐서 마릭 바래 몽 봐서 급하지 낙통을 막고 지제 마통한자 몽 바래 마도 봐서 마릭 바래 진짜 디묵세의 현대지 파 값이 마신 바진자 디묵래 진짜 되네 삼로디 셰바디 삼로디다 하 먹어 되는데 디묵래 몽 바래 마릭 바래
In the third line, we had the word ignorance, as we have again in the fifth line. The third line, the Tibetan word for ignorance was timuk. In the fourth line, it's mongpa. So these are two words for ignorance. They're less common. The most common one is marikpa. They all have generally the same meaning. The easiest to explain is marikpa, where rik or rikpa is knower, as in lo rik. So it's knowing, it's knowledge. And ma is the negation, not knowing, unknowing. So these three different words, generally speaking, have the same meaning. So if someone asks, or if you wonder to yourself, do gods exist? Is there such a thing as gods, these unseen beings? So we do not know. This is an ignorance. When we develop the relevant valid cognizer, we will then know with certainty whether gods exist or not. That then is the wisdom, or instead of wisdom, the knowledge, the knowing as to whether gods exist or not. But until we have that valid cognition, we have an ignorance. But the way to counteract ignorance is to develop knowledge or wisdom.
저기 몽바다 마릭바다 디무글라네 로치르고 하디 하모거행기 셰바텔라 디 몽바 마티모 다데네기 하모거행기 하모거데 유텔라다 자마라 용거로와 근데 몽바라데 레군제 레몽바 레군데 하 레군데 레몽베 몽바샤다 근데 데코나니라 몽바스 동바니 뭐 데코나 동바니로와 동바니 뭐 하모거데 텔라 몽바세 근데 몽바 마릭바세 디수딘질려 제사 레군데로 몽베 몽바 데코나니로 몽베 마릭바세 레군데라 몽베 마릭바세 언딘 마샤데 근데 지금 미다발라 몽베 마릭바세다 언딘이 내가 안주게다 지카소레 엔데니게 춘주이 이번에 전대의 신라 목표 마릭발라도 디 전대의 신이 하모가 목바도 마릭발 전대의 신라 목표 마릭바시로 전대의 신들아 전대의 신세요로 전대에서 자가나라 목을 전대의 신세다 신지 민제 내내게 당한 주디디 다디디 가서라 다디 신들 민가사지서디 가서래 데니게 신들의 하모가 몽바세 하모데 신들의 몽베 마릭바세 하모가 데네 하모가 되게래 진 몽드 가리나 하모가 되게 삼노데 베기 신들 가리 신이 나서면 삼당에 되데 하모가 되게 몽지 마릭바죠 디 몽베 마릭 신들의 몽베 마릭바세거든 제가 데니게 다 몽베 다디가니 신들의 몽베 마릭바차들 디경을 다디 거서 하고 이제 뒷몸을 말이만 세사래. 만줄데 다 신이 세버려다.
So we just had an illustration of ignorance and the lamp which illuminates the darkness. So you, as an audience, you possessed the valid cognition, or the lamp that illuminates our own darkness, as to what the names of these trees were. Neither of us were particularly sure. So this is how it works. There's ignorance and there's knowledge, or usually translated as wisdom. So these three Tibetan words, which are translated in different ways, but commonly as ignorance, Timuk, Mongpa, and Marikpa. So they mean ignorance, a not knowing. They are applied to a wide variety of objects, including ordinary things like trees, but of course the Dharma topics of cause and effect, true existence, impermanence. So the ignorance of cause and effect is not knowing cause and effect. The ignorance of true existence is not knowing the actual situation in relation to true existence. Likewise, the ignorance of impermanence, which is the not knowing of impermanence. And all of these illustrations of ignorance or not knowing is counteracted by coming to know that particular topic, that particular object of discussion. And in this way, ignorance is eliminated through the cultivation of knowledge or wisdom. And again, just to say with knowledge and wisdom, it's the same word as well. In English, the meaning is very different, but it's the same Tibetan word.
제가 퇴비 디모트메 인세 제가 딘디게 퇴용도 퇴비게다 나는 저기 니수 마싱바치 카레이메네 디 파로브정지 퇴도 기엔지 마셰 제셰 캡장아서 퇴용도 퇴비 된디 체명해봐 니에지도 디제샤스 하고여도 대지 몸부 문바디 파세도 그래서 제가다 그 로바에도 너군이메 바차나시 퇴바세디 아저 마셰비기 문바디 세게 되메나시리스
The meaning of this fifth line then is that through hearing one gathers knowledge. Through listening, hearing, studying, one gathers knowledge. And it's this gathering of knowledge which is the lamp that eradicates ignorance or not knowing. So therefore, listening is is likened here to the lamp, because this is how we gather knowledge.
군도 몽비게 안자심 천자인 탑소가 마다 된비 조기촉 ane phombar kyur kya mikyu zawo yins.
The next few lines. The greatest wealth no robber can carry away, the weapon that conquers the enemy, confusion. The best of friends giving guidance in skillful means, near and dear whether or not you are poor.
Anda dine kumbo loso mikhe norgi chok sede nga zuge tebege jidana nga zuge chalaro chiwe nga zuge chalaro ne kumagi khera laya ge nya yorwa nga zuge nga zuge chalaya yani mi chodo ye nya yore yani kumagi kujo yore yani ji kumbo laso sede yana kumagi kujo yana chodo yana 차베기 취 매바서야 야네 니미게 매 치지 매바서야 돼야지 강보 지가서 잘라로 규절라이나 데니게 냥아 망고요로 와다 제사다 kumbo라서 데니게 잘라라 데니게 냥하다 데니 망고요레스 이나 kumbo라서 미케 너기 촉세데 아 저기 퇴비 된들 삼단제 아즈레 기비 연된이세 거다 근데 가서 기비 연된 팀 가서 연된 다데데 근데 추름 냠는지야 진소 파지도 그냥 잠니제 장주 셈사당 다음에부터 베셔라당 근데 등에 준주의 신의고 진여주야 데니게 랑이 귤에 깨봐이나 데니게 너기다 나중에 너나네 초도 규바레스 제가 대소 아니 구마요 꾸려야요 말에 미 수지게 구마고 터야요 말 구마고야요 말에 미 초로에게 셈제요 말에 구마고야 셈제요 말에 내 라그레 셈제요 말에 아니 지게 미 지기에 다 철벽에 껴서 철벽에 철라당 그래서 셈제 가요 말에 제가 디 너기 초래 디펜디 초래 임바데 가르레스나 디기 저게 지단 유자라로 주변에 대소 내가 평소 변주에 첨부 유첨부 약으로 주변에 대소이바 어느 구멍고 와다 초바다 미치와라서바 차서는 네 교부 차로 걸어와서 제자디 곧 템부 메팅에 차고 그랬어. 다장아주 시인 장년 아주길에 연된 계샤바디 구매구야다 초야다 너르다 제니 하얀 추다 데르서 매바스에 매래 매반사 랑마시 바도 소수길에 요래 제자디 만주 기디네 베제다야게 랑예 베제다야 샬레 베제다 투야게 인자 된더게 초래스 초도 교발했어.
Just a couple of words missed in the English. The greatest wealth and so the greatest wealth no robber and so forth can carry away. So the and no robber and so forth refers to the different ways that we lose the possessions, our wealth, these things that we value so. So whether we are robbed, whether things are stolen from us, whether we are cheated, or whether our house burns down or we lose everything in a flood. There are many, many ways that we can lose what these material possessions that we value so. However, our greatest wealth, can also be our greatest jewel, is our knowledge arisen through hearing. This is our greatest wealth, our greatest jewel. And this cannot be taken in any of those means. Our knowledge of ethical restraint, concentration, the wisdom realizing emptiness, bodhicitta, and so forth. All of this knowledge, all of these good qualities, this knowledge and the integration of that knowledge, this cannot be stolen from us. It cannot be taken with violence from us. We can't be cheated out of it. And the elements such as fire or floods cannot harm this knowledge and the other good qualities we've developed. And moreover, these good qualities always benefit. They benefit us and they benefit others. And they cannot be lost in the ways that our material possessions can.
제사당 지게 너라도 소소게 가서 규절라디 keleb요와 제사당 규절라디 가서도 랑기 강아세야다 되게 두게리아 간두고로와 제사디네자 너라세오와 제사디네자 다 랑기 장셰베 신 랑기 규래 기셰베게다 잠니젤라소바다 되네기 수르인 냠레라소바다 되네가 직딩에지나 샤라 냠레 아주 규래 지게 퇴섬 제네 기셰베게 또베 냠랭게 연된디게 지다 노랑라 가서 랑게 동아시아다 랑에 디기두에 팽규에서 노르와나 랑에 팽게 노르와 되네 자디 초도요 디 노른 등한주게 노라 안에서 상생기 노르시디다 맞주 규찰라디게 이제 안는 난기 냠랭기 최기 냠랭기 노르세디다 디 딩이나네 다 초도교보다 셈게 맞주데 도부인된 규례기를 길에 사지 냠랭 초도교발에 사지 가서 내가 아들이야 판도에 나라리아 판도에 개침부여 되게 안데 안데 생기 구마라 소바다 개메 되게 되네 자다 너기 초도교발에 사지.
The meaning of wealth is that it brings benefit to oneself and perhaps also through the expression of it to others. So this is generally what we think about as wealth, that it leads to material happiness and comfort. The supreme wealth referred to here, or the greatest wealth, is our knowledge and the integration of that knowledge, or this process that comes about in dependence on hearing. This cannot be taken away from others, not forcefully, nor deceptively, nor even through natural events such as fire or flood. And moreover, this greatest of wealth, this brings lasting benefit to oneself and others, and lasting in the sense of throughout this and future lives. The good quality of this greatest wealth is that it brings benefit throughout this and future lives to ourselves and others, unlike material wealth.
유양 초래 네 제보양 초도 유벌 두고로와 지상 아주 변조가 저변에 이게 탈바다 탐지 예매고 토토에 매르와 지상 달 남점을 맞아봐이나 지상 되는 냠랭이 림바디기 먼저 탈바다 탐지 예매고 초 아니 딜에 고바 토야지 띵이 되와 토야지 매반데 딜에 되는게 초 톱투에서 너기 초래해야지 그 제비기 차내나 너기 초래해서 고두고로와.
If you think about cause and effect, what is the result that follows from having material wealth? Material happiness, material comfort. And this is fine, this is needed. But that's pretty much what will follow from it. But in dependence on the greatest wealth, those good qualities that arise through hearing, the result that follows from that is liberation and enlightenment.
군도 몽비게 자줌 천자인 세대 지상 군도 몽바 세대듯이 셰바나지 유칸라 양파 마싱베게 몽바 마릭바세야디 몽바세야 제자데서 만족의 자오로 시디르와 당한저게 만족의 베되샤 셰당 콘도 나자 마릭바세 차사 유마도 바르와 되샤는 유딩옹의 순이 마도 록셰 차도요 콘도에나 유디 마도베게 록셰 차도요 나자다 차사 유마도베 유디니서 하먹고 그 록셰 차도요 지선 디수 차사 몽베 마릭 몽바세디 군도 몽바 유강래야 되니게 하먹고 왜니서 하먹 몽디겐디게 맞아 자오래서래 지선 자오디 디가들 강아제디 디디고로와 지선 아주 마싱 베겐지는 아주 강아 먹고 리랑신이랑게 강아 샬라 강아 라신이가 강아 저기 지선 몽베 군도 몽베 마싱 바이 마릭바디 아주 자오래서 지선 디 자오 점야게 매워서야라야 천장나진의 가르스네 되니게 퇴바제 퇴비 뒤에 3단계 시비 원인수 시비게 독별 시비요 러디다 아니 디게 매 뭐바 마리바스 매바서 천자나지레스 지사 랑이 퇴바제 퇴비되 니수 하고 거기게 삼로 기비 시비 연된디 다 나서 몽바세기 천자나지 천자지레스 몽바 자고 좀 얘기 매바서 천자디레스.
Coming to the seventh line, the weapon that conquers the enemy, confusion. So confusion as a translation is fine, but again, it's ignorance. It's one of the words for ignorance. Because again, ignorance can be understood as confusion in that one is confused about how something actually is, what the actual situation is. So normally when talking like this, it refers to reality, how things actually abide in reality. But it is the general knowing and not knowing. So not knowing is a confusion. So the word here for confusion is is another word for ignorance, and it's usually translated as such. So this ignorance, this not knowing, being confused, this is our enemy. And the reason it is our enemy is it is our confusion, our ignorance, that harms us. And through acting under its influence, we bring harm to others. This is our sole enemy, our real enemy, our actual enemy, our own ignorance or confusion. Our confusion about reality, how things actually are, whether on the ultimate or the ordinary level. And the weapon that destroys this internal enemy is the cultivation of the good qualities that arise through hearing. This confusion, this ignorance is within us. It's consciousness. To eradicate it, we need to develop contrary consciousnesses, and the process to do so is through hearing and reflecting. In this way, we come to understand reality. We come to understand how things actually are, again, on the ultimate and the ordinary level. And this knowledge that comes about through hearing and reflecting, this is what eradicates ignorance, our true enemy.
난 탑줄 망다 된 조기 촉세다. 난 조나네 초도 규버들이에서 당한주 퇴바체 퇴비된 신바디 하고와디 제럽 되는 게 신바디다 그 조나네 초도 규버에서 지사다 가서 조세 되게 한주 조보세지 한주 마신벌에 안디가 한주라 디니디 레다세 한주를 편도 지해 한주를 강아지 로봇 지해디라 한주 조보레서라 소슬이야 가와다 가후체 소슬 제와체 소수기 니스 마시와 어떤 디니 제월 디니지네 야고열서 하다 안디니 지기요 말 디니지네 야고요 말에서 하다 안디니기 진한주를 롭된 지해는 로 지해다 강아지에 탑람 디스팅엔딜이야 한주는 민디네 로봇세지 딘실레그로와 지사 디니에서 탑수 마다 된비 조기 촉세데 다디 나지 지당에 넘비 나지 되는 게 조고들래 다디 퇴삼집에 흉들이야 조고도 초도 교발했어 가선 퇴비 흉디 날이야 나지 흉디 날라 갈수록 되는게 나지 강한 세야다 디기 주비에 탈람배 마보 된요래서 탑수 마도 된비 탑란배 망부 된요래서 지상 탑란 망부 된 맞아 되는게 나지 퇴배제 되는데 삼다 하고요도 되는 아주 그 강아지게 세투그래 소설의 디기 주투그래 대사 되는자 나지 퇴바제 퇴바제의 계심으로 퇴비 되는데 삼다 하고요도 디조 초도 교바들이에서 조 소설의 판도한 초도 교바들이에서
The eighth line, the best of friends giving guidance and skillful means. Just before coming to Kenda's explanation, the word guidance is usually translated as instructions, spiritual instructions, personal instructions, practice instructions, pith instructions. But the meaning here is fine. But just so you know, because we had this word instructions a lot in the previous section when we were looking at the greatnesses of the Dharma. So it's the same word here, and it is. And the meaning, guidance, is precise. The best of friends giving guidance in skillful means. The best of friends refers to our hearing and reflecting on the Dharma. So hearing and reflecting, these two often come together because it's not just a passive case of gathering knowledge, but it is the integration through thinking about it. As one hears, thinking about the meaning. And hearing and reflecting here is likened to the best of friends, or our supreme friend. So if we think of someone who, various people in our lives who have been our best friends, why so? Well, we knew we could rely on them. They would be there in our time of need. They would always be reliable. They would be stable friends. Moreover, when we needed their counsel, their advice, their guidance, we knew we could trust what they had to say, trust their motivation, and trust that the quality of advice that would be given, in other words, the advice would be unmistaken. Moreover, a best friend would know us well and would be able to deliver that advice in a skillful manner, in accordance with our own personality and our own mental state at that time. This is who we would consider a best friend, having all these qualities. And the very best of friends, the supreme friend, is that of hearing and reflecting. Because as we hear and reflect, we develop ever more inner qualities, and these become stable within us, and these are in accordance with reality. It's these inner qualities that come about through hearing and reflecting that lead us to act skillfully in the widest of variety of circumstances. But to develop these qualities, we need to hear and reflect repeatedly over a sustained period, and therefore hearing is our best friend, supreme friend.
Drobo se di nganzo lia kanga chide kanga se da anji nganzo di hi tu so so le giwu ya ge ro che hin de la nganzo drobo sa chi ro so so lia kanga je hen da so so le ma ga wa che so so le kanga je so so ne we jin de la nganzo zhawo la ge ro chi sa de ne za nganzo lia de ne gi nganzo mi di ge drobo sa de ge dan de ne drobo di na xin dan nganzo gi be ne nganzo 탑수 마다 뜀베서 ben에 자주 람르세다 되네게 저 제르미 손시 람르세 디나리아 가르순고르세네 나한줄이야 강아 용하게 탑람 강아되는 용고래 강아 셋업되는 제고르세 탑람 대표는 개와 치마 나선을 개변의 동아되는 용고래 델레 탈별 하다 미고 봐도 탑람 되는 저 수름 순고르세 소야다 코와레야 강아데 디타야라 타바 토고래 타바 토베 탑라 람냠는 되는 제고르세 하다 디랑 맞아 심지어 탐지게 된다려 안 냠는 되는 제고르세 탑람 망고 휴된샤로와 대소된 바나신 안주에 냠는 제바이나 랑대와 안내가 체del이나랑 디기요야다 랑 셈베 기부요야 안시할래야 판도제도야 안개와 치마이나야 하다 미고 뭐 톱뒤에 땡델이나 디기요도야 안디마세 안 땡이 대와 타르바 토여도 땡이 대와 대와네 대와마도 누가 자원은 용모야 차야 되네 상교고방 토여도 되네 랑 대와 맞아 시할래야 판도 자신부 주투고 예반자 되네기 니 땡기요바 되네기 탑렙네 땡기요바자 되네기 슝델이야 아주 퇴배제 퇴배된데게도 사고나 딩아주 조초도 유발해 사실상 디기 내가 배 대화지고래 아니 개와 치마다 땡기 대화 톱투고 도발지고로 봐 지산도 조기 초래 해야지 디고로
In general, when we talk about a friend and we talk about an enemy, we would differentiate a friend as being someone who we enjoy being in their company with, and an enemy, someone who we don't enjoy being in their company. Here we understand in our context here that Lama Tsongkhapa is referring to, also refers to Lamp on the Path, a foundational text, as being our friend, because it presents the various methods, or we have here skillful means, the various, but rather because it's the same word in Tibetan, the various methods or techniques that lead to one radically transforming one's mind. In a text such as Lamp on the Path, through hearing and reflecting extensively on it, one will come to identify suffering in all its varieties and its causes, giving us the knowledge of why we are experiencing pain and misery. Moreover, through hearing and reflecting on Lamp on the Path, we will come to understand that we do not have to remain bound in the suffering realms of samsara. Freedom is possible for ourselves and all beings. Moreover, through hearing and reflecting on this friend, Lamp on the Path, we'll come to recognize what are the mental paths to cultivate and how to do so. And in this way, we can have confidence that we can achieve liberation and enlightenment. So a friend such as Lamp on the Path is a friend that who through relying on the methods or the skillful means that this friend presents us to, this guidance that our friend gives us, through relying on this, we will experience ever greater happiness in this life, we'll have an ever more meaningful, worthwhile impact on others, and moreover, we'll be creating the causes that will only lead to ever more happiness, life to life, as well as the progression towards liberation and enlightenment.
야, 다리네. 폼버 그렇게 미글 자원이스. 폼버 그렇게 세대 안저 교보로 차베 나시오르다나 지 변주를 더네 지 나무 변주 오스요바지 안 변주 더네 야마 교보 차려 여러 와다 폼바 교 안디메제 당봉아저 지게 르션션 베칼야 수부디게 야보다 탕부여바제 안딘 마지 수부디 야직네 나자다 데네 토네 야직 강아 지 차야데 용수이루와 제가 데네 자가 지당 안주 쪽보세데 남윤데 소소를 변조다 오스데 소소야 거우진 로보진 지 쪽보세데 심단 직자고치 현다 주여베네 가브리엘이 안주 변조를 교 차야데 된 쪽보디 바지 야시라마제제 안파 다른 줘야다 안지게 남보 소수교 수부되고다 안지게 로 야고유디 갑래 안지 소소 가보시 로고체 안디니게 안소소네 나자다 데니게 토네 안 수부디 강하다 데 교월 차데네 로고디 바 다른 차줘야디 안저 용고로 와다 지 데니게 지단게 안저 로고세야 되게 되네 용고로 봐 지자 다 소수기 되네 용고할 때 저게 다 소소기 퇴바지 퇴비 되는데라 삼제 소소기 연된 규례 계시베기 냠능이 림바디 냠능이 계셔바디 다디 소소기 변조 교 차베나 니파 메가 책 말해서 소소 게디나 여념도 여여 말해서 소소기 수부교보다 되네게 지 차베네 되네게 토네 아니 곧 파 다른 차고 강화를 판도 여여 말해서 소소기 변조다 되네게 강화를 충분히네 소수기 시비 연된 퇴배제 퇴배된데 냠솔는데 수림의 딩이지나 셔라라서 받게 되바디기 랑 자오 펜기레스 판도도 그래서 세델라 펜고레 쳔발라 펜고레 제가 자오원이들이 싸워 다 조봉원이라네 디리 유어메바디레스다 조보 유어균에 줘야 메디간디 펜바짱냥 죽티겐 조보 차고레스 다양한 지단게 조고 세디 내가 소수기를 펜바 제 약보제 아니 소수 강화의 태여도 교보를 차여도 파 다른 거 사야 되는 용도 와서 다들 랑기 퇴바죠 퇴배돼 삼단 소소 냠는 게 되니기 끼려 봐디 다 되네 교와줘야 기내려 말해서
near and dear whether or not you are poor. What this refers to is experience that you're likely to have had in your life, that some friends really are just fair weather friends. That you may feel very close to them, you may have a good relationship, but when your situation changes, somehow they call less often, they come around less often. Perhaps when one's health declines, these friends, they don't come visit, they don't call and check in. Or maybe, if, as the line says, when one's material situation radically changes and one suddenly becomes impoverished, then all too often people experience a loss of many friends. So this is very much a situation in our world. But what we have heard and reflected on will never desert us. In fact, quite the opposite. The knowledge, the good qualities that we have gained through hearing and reflection, these greatest of friends, the greatest of wealth, they will help us even more when our situation worsens. As our health fails, as it may well do, as our material situation worsens, as it may well do, the good qualities that we have developed when times were better, these we will rely on, and they will be there for us. They will hold our hand, they will support us in a way that fair weather friends just will not. So this is the quality or the benefit that comes through extensive hearing and reflecting, and thereby developing qualities within oneself, that when we do encounter hard times, when you fall on hard times, this will be the best of friends, the supreme wealth, who we can rely on, no matter how our situation changes.
Nisudi Shingri, Hawgres, Chizande Shingodu, and the Momba Maribati, Mashing Pa, Dogres, Chizadineza, Zugi, Tebachin, Tebu, Dundela, Yawachimal, Hadamukova, Toy, Tablam Shing, De Shing Bigade, Dune Yamso Lembaletine, Nikiwachimal Hadamukova Toya. And the Tarbada Tamjikin Bukova Toya, Tablam Dine, Tebaletine, Tune, Dundela, some time, and Tarba Tamjiki Bokova, Talam Dikishing, Dinyam Sulembaletine, Anzulia, Tarbata Tamjiki Bokova, top 2 at the Ungores, Chesach, Denichas on Tubi Paris, Chesan Tuba said the Turname, Tubi, Tuishing body, and Anzuki Norgin and the Chodu by a dire, D, and another draw Naya, draw Chodu, you and Megan, draw the dires, Chesan on the Tarbata Tamjiki Bokova, go by Jiba, Dini Deva, Toba chicken, draw the Chagores, the Nayazada. Töbi payan dini siyores, dini zanda töba chayadi pemasi kiechimburiyes, chezan rangi shekyang dini New York Stage, chezan töba chayadi töyadi rangi yudang longju benjur kangi toni bishu dangchini dini ki nyamling riba töyadi kiechimburiyes, dini töyani sosoge da lu so longju la kandisi kangal töbini, anchi kangal mazimba chi nyamling chayadi kiechimburiyes, dini manzu diring shoge da di 가사나 지은 시에기다 퇴백이다 평연로지 누승고로와
We've been listening to teachings on this garland of birth stories and the Jatakata tales. And in here, the purpose of hearing is presented. Why we need to hear teachings, listen, study teachings. So, in brief, it's through the process of hearing that we gather knowledge. So, the wisdom side, we gather knowledge. And this serves to overcome ignorance. Knowledge being the opposite of ignorance. So this, if you want a one-line answer of why does one need to hear, listen or study, it is to gather knowledge, so as to overcome the lack of knowledge. But through hearing this presentation, one hopefully comes to understand more clearly the great purpose of hearing and reflecting, or studying and reflecting, which is that as we develop ever more knowledge, and through reflecting on that knowledge, we come to gain confidence or trust or have faith in the teachings. Our joy, our delight in receiving those teachings will grow. And this is indispensable, because through taking delight in hearing and reflecting, we'll want to do more so. And through doing more so, there is a direct relationship between how much one hears and reflects and how much a change there is to one's mind. So one needs to experience pleasure, to take delight in hearing and reflecting in order to do ever more so. And as one does more so, as one puts in more, one gets out more. One's mind starts to be pacified, to be tamed, to be subdued, the indispensable foundation for concentration. This then gives one confidence that I've seen development within myself. I know I actually can develop concentration, which is also required in order to actually realize emptiness. So through the cultivation of knowledge, one comes to understand this entire process of our existence. We really come to know ourselves well, because we recognize why we suffer, what it is that keeps us bound in the suffering realms of samsara. And through this recognition, we also come to recognize that these afflictions that keep us bound in suffering, they do not identify us. They can be thereby removed, because we are not these afflicted minds. They can be removed. And they can be removed through cultivating the opposite minds, the contrary minds, the wholesome minds. So in this way, through gathering ever more knowledge, and thereby overcoming the lack of knowledge, one starts to subdue one's mind and sees progress. This leads to delight, because the mind is more pacified now, and this leads to confidence, and it leads to one turning ever more to the Dharma, turning away from meaningless affairs in this life, starting to see what consumes us so, our time and our energy, seeing it in its true light, in a proportionate manner, and having our focus readily turn towards hearing and reflecting on the Dharma. So in this way, we come to recognize how listening is the lamp that dispels the darkness of not knowing. That the qualities that listening and reflecting leads to is our greatest wealth that no robber can take away. That it is the weapon that will destroy our ignorance, our lack of knowledge, and in particular, all our afflictions, what keeps us bound in the suffering realms of samsara. And thereby we recognize that the qualities we develop through hearing and reflecting are our best of friends, in that their guidance can always be relied on and is always accessible. Moreover, when we are facing the times of greatest emotional upheaval, greatest challenge, whether through our physical health declining or other challenges in our life, these inequalities we've developed through hearing and listening, these are what we can rely on. So the purpose of hearing all of this, hearing this teaching this morning, is for us to generate an ever greater determination to hear teachings and reflect on them, coming to move them in terms of what we value and prioritize in our life to being center, through recognizing that this is the path to happiness in this and future lives for ourselves and others, and thereby start to let go of the other activities that consume us so. So thank you. Then we can conclude there for this morning. But if you have questions, there's time for that too. And thank you, and enjoy your lunch.